Grant has a lot of experience in the business. He's basically the face at Checkpoint 4.9, and we are very happy that Grant is able to speak for us today. Again, without further interruption, I'm giving over the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Grant Asplund.
Chris, good afternoon to all of you. I have to say good morning to myself mentally because it's a bit early. Can you hear me okay? Okay, terrific. Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to just jump right in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me to come in and spending this time with me. Hopefully you're not having something to drink like this, but maybe you're having a nice beer. I'm not going to talk about infinity today, but I always like to start off because I think that a lot of people are totally unaware of how much Checkpoint offers, how broad their portfolio, our portfolio really is. And, you know, we're a software company. And one of the things that I always find amazing, you know, in my long history with Checkpoint, in fact, little anecdote here, I was Checkpoint's first worldwide evangelist when they had 400 employees in 1998 through an acquisition that most people don't even know about anymore. And it's quite ironic, 20 years later, I am back at Checkpoint through an acquisition, the acquisition of Dome9. And we're going to talk about cloud today and specifically why we're in this new world where you are your biggest threat. You, your users, your people really truly are the biggest concern, and this is supported by the data. I'll show it to you as we go through. So first of all, I suspect all of you are very familiar with these numbers or numbers similar. So I'm certainly not going to belabor these, but I do want to point out it is fast growing. Right now, I mean, the cloud is taking over the world and it's really very, very exciting. And it's because there are so many benefits. But I always like to caution this enthusiasm with some perspective. Now, albeit this is 2018 data, but do you know that in 2018, the amount we spent on the cloud represented less than 5% of total IT spend. So the moral of this story is that we, together with our great partners like Chris and TECHWAY, really have got to get focused on unleashing, unshackling our customers and really showing them how to take full advantage of and really exploit and make the most out of the cloud. Now, how many of you have one of these right now in the back of your house powering everything you have 24/7, 365? Quick show of hands. The choice is obvious. And you know, I had the wonderful pleasure of speaking at a IDC panel in a place called Tremblant, just outside of Montreal. And it was really interesting because the IDC analyst, he said, you know, everyone is going to be moving to the cloud. Everyone. It's just going to take, you know, 40 or 50 years. And I think it's really interesting because the fact of the matter is, everybody is going to be moving to the cloud, and there is a great deal of confusion. And I'll just cite one well-known company here in America. Do you know that they actually have on their menu a cloud macchiato? I'm not joking. In fact, there's a local mattress store here in my area. They run a commercial on television, and the commercial is, come on in and get your own private cloud. There is a lot of confusion. You know, I spoke at an event when we were out traveling and speaking, and I say, how many of you are using a public cloud? A couple of hands go up. How many of you have a Facebook or LinkedIn account? Everybody's hands go up. So there's just a lot of misunderstanding and confusion. Now, I'm a simple man, okay? and I like to present concepts in simple analogies, metaphors that I think really make it easier to grasp the nuances and the differences between these environments. And I always say that, you know, for the last couple of decades, you've been the captain of your own ship. Truly, you choose the petrol, the harbor to anchor. You know, it's all up to you. What you put in the cupboard to eat, everything has been on you. You've truly been the captain of your own ship, running your own data center. And now, you know, the world's changed a bit and you're renting a slightly larger boat. Now, some people laugh at this, but the reality is, in that previous boat that you've been captain of for the last couple of decades, if you want a new bedroom, right? I mean, mixing metaphors, you've got to go and rack that next appliance. It's not just automagic. Whereas, as you know, in this environment, a click of the mouse and you can scale up or down, you know, in an instant. And this introduces some new challenges. And just because you've been the captain of your own ship for the last couple of decades, it does not qualify you to step into and get in the bridge of this craft without certainly some training, some knowledge, and I would suggest some really great partners, because the fact of the matter is this space is moving so fast, it's impossible. It's impossible for any one of us to keep up with it all, to be experts on it all. And oh, by the way, you got a business to run. That's why I think it's so important to align yourself with great partners, you know, like TECHWAY, where they really make the investment for you so you don't have to, and you have confidence and trust. And that's really what it all comes down to. You know, this is an environment that's built for Fortune 1 million and Fortune 1 to accommodate everybody. And it's a new world with lots of nuances and subtleties. And there are things that you just simply never see in your on-premise data center that you will see now in this new world. And one of the things is what we've all seen if we go back to the days of virtualization. You know, you'll remember when we moved from using 8 to 12% utilization of our hardware, and thank you Stanford, virtualization was born. And now all of a sudden, you know, we're starting to really exercise that hardware, but we had new challenges, right? What were they? Inter-VM communications, vMotion, things we'd never seen before, and we couldn't abandon what we had been doing, but in fact, we did have to get new skills and new tools to address these new challenges. Now, we love this. This is what we love about the cloud, but it's also what creates some, you know, serious consternation and challenges for your infrastructure. And that's this constantly moving, changing, almost alive, ephemeral aspect of the cloud. You know, it is what's so awesome, but, you know, when you start to consider the way it can cause havoc with auditing and compliance, and, you know, there are some real challenges. And this is something, again, that you're not going to see in your own data center. You know, the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, you're the one that chooses everything in your environment. And it's very simple. Hey, kids, time to eat. Throw out a couple of boxes of cereal, because you don't have that heaving and that contraction and expansion. The challenge becomes, how do I impose consistency? How do I impose absolute uniformity throughout my entire environment as I scale up and down? This is where it really, really can be challenging, and you need the tools to allow you to be able to accommodate and, frankly, move at the speed of cloud. Now, we're in the middle of conducting this research this year, and I'll hopefully have results by the fall. This is from last year's cloud security study, and we conducted this. It was actually conducted by Cybersecurity Insiders. They have some 600,000 constituents, so it's a very, very large sampling. And I'm just curious how this lines up with you and your environment. Do you see yourself currently using just a single cloud environment, or are you like more using hybrid, multiple clouds? In the US particularly, there's a long tail of physical equipment on premise that we've had for years and years. Some governmental agencies just can't let go of it, but it is this long legacy tail that creates challenges for us because we want to drag it along, right? There's that one application we just can't move to the cloud or whatever. And so it's very, very common we see this hybrid environment and this long tail of infrastructure that needs to be pulled along. And the other point I'll make is we believe that the companies that are just a single cloud and nothing else really are just dipping their toe in the water, just getting started. And more often than not, we believe everyone's going to be using multiple clouds of some sort. So what are the biggest challenges from an operational perspective? And this is, as Yogi Berra famously said, it's deja vu all over again, because ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are. It's being able to see everything and then being able to ensure I've got compliance. And I think everyone knows, we're all been in this biz for a long time, certainly security overall. If you can't see it, you can't assess it, monitor it, control it, build policies for it. The absolute fundamental starting blocks is visibility. You have to have crystal clear visibility. This is important. And compliance, you have to read that word in the context of ephemeral, of always moving, always changing. This is where compliance becomes very, very challenging. Furthermore, like you and virtually every other nation on this planet, we're getting more and more and more compliance requirements as we move more into the public cloud. And so GDPR and all of the associated requirements have to be continuously enforced, right? This is what's so different from the old day of kind of not set it and forget it, but set it and then go check it now and then, right? This world is you've got to be constantly monitoring, continuously imposing and enforcing security because the environment is constantly changing. Now, I mentioned earlier, I'm a simple man. This is my analogy for on-premise and public data center. They are both places we can go swimming. No one, I think, can dispute that. But that is where the differences really start to bifurcate. You know, hey, it's both places to go swimming, but the one on the left, you care about chlorine, about pH. You care if there's enough water in the pool, and if there isn't, you have to go get the hose and fill it up. The one on the right, I'll bet you're more concerned about what might eat you rather than pH or chlorine. And as implied by the waterfall, it is constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly getting replenished. And it also is a bit murkier. There's a little bit less visibility in this environment that you need to be able to address. And, you know, I'll give you a real example. And I heard this conversation, and this is what can get you into trouble, okay? I hear a network manager talking to his engineer, and he says to his engineer, hey, Larry, you know about those load balancers, don't you? Larry says, oh yeah, I've been using F5's load balancer for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. Oh, okay, great. Then go configure that ELB for me. And we make this foolish assumption that just because it has the same name, load balancer, that it's all going to be exactly the same. And it's not. And we're talking about something that's virtually completely software defined for Larry. It's not something he can go put his hands on. So there's many nuances that really, really have very serious consequences. And many, many organizations are doing all they can to race into the cloud, maybe not necessarily planning it appropriately. And everybody's trying to use these legacy tools in this new environment, and it fails. Just like I was talking about before, you know, we didn't have tools that knew, understood, and could assess vMotion. So we couldn't use traditional, you know, snort, you know, to try to see that information. We needed new tools. We're in the same boat again today. And while some of the tools may work some of the time and give you limited functionality, you're really not going to get the enriched contextual information and really understand your cloud environment with the tools that you've been using. Now, this will go quickly, but I just love to highlight, you know, because we all know that the cloud has its challenges from a management perspective, right? To protect you from you, what we've been talking about. But I also want to remind everyone of two things. One, I don't have to get into your data center. I don't need a card key. I can get there from anywhere as long as I've got the credentials. That's one. And two, the same automation, the same cool bots and capabilities that you and I are exploiting and exercising to make really cool things happen, the bad guys are using them too. And we wanted to show that. So we stood up a cloud environment. Standard access controls, username and password, nothing, let me emphasize, nothing in it. Nothing. But we did stand up a honeypot because we want to find out, hey, what's going to go on? Who cares? In 15 minutes, there was a tremendous amount of automation that kicked in to start rattling the door, shaking the doorknob, finding out if I can scan and get in and pushing and poking. And in 1 week, in 7 days, nearly 4 million varied attempts to get into nothing. Why? Because again, it's easy, it's accessible, it's very, very low-hanging fruit, and the bad guys are using automation to make their tasks more efficient. We got to do the same thing, okay? This is critical. Now, the other thing we have to eradicate is stupid. And I just want to go through this and show that this really, you know, human beings are the consequence. You know, human beings are the ones where they're the root of the problems most of the time. But last time I checked, I can't get rid of them. So this, I'm sure many are familiar with. Lots of companies use MongoDB. And I suspect there's at least some of you that are familiar with Shodan. So what was interesting is I had the pleasure of working with Shira Shamban, Parasolvo. She's got a new company that's a shift left company. It's pretty exciting. You should check it out, Parasolvo. So Shira was in 8200, officer 8200 for like 12, 14 years. And then she was at Dome 9 and subsequently Checkpoint, and then just recently left. And we had a chance to work together. And she did a little bit of research to find out how many instances of MongoDB there are out in the world. And we found, you know, somewhere north of 60,000. But this is the point I wanted to make. More than 23,000 had either no or just default username and password. So this should be alarming. And I guess the real point is we need to be cautious. We need to be careful, and we need to be diligent about making sure that we're not doing stupid stuff. This, I think, is a great stat that highlights the critical need for visibility. Because if 1 out of 4 don't even know, you know, that's kind of frightening. But this, again, is just really reiterating the need to have tools for visibility. Now, there is an unbelievable amount of pressure that's getting imposed on your security departments, on the enterprise security departments all around the world. And it's a number of factors, not the least of which the pace at which this cloud is moving, and it's just really difficult for us to keep up because we have so many other things that we're worrying about. But I mentioned this earlier, and I got to mention it again. It's the nuances that'll get you. It's the little subtleties. It's the check boxes. It's not making sure you go through every configuration screen to make sure that you're not leaving any port open, that you're not leaving anything unencrypted or what have you. We're in this new world where, you know, I always kind of define software defined as like we're now marionette controllers. And the strings of the APIs down to that little doll. More APIs, more strings, more fine-grained movement, but it takes skill to be able to do that. And this is, it's completely different than what we've been accustomed to, and we're jumping into it a little bit too abruptly. And I mentioned the story about the elastic load balancer versus an F5 load balancer, and that's just one simple, stupid example. But the complexities that we're seeing in this hyper-connected world we're in, people are federating authentication, we're getting, all of these complexities are exacerbating our challenges. Furthermore, I want to ask all of you, when you have a problem, you got to do some forensics, some checking it out. You want to find out a problem is. What's one of the first things you do? What's the IP address? Well, in the cloud, that's kind of also become less critical because I might have a function that uses 5 public IP addresses in 15 seconds and then it disappears. So these nuances and complexities are really, really making it very challenging for all of us. And I talked about this before, but I got to stress this, man. You know, where before, hey, Chris, give me your card key so I can get into the data center. I got some work to do over the weekend. He ain't doing that. He's not stupid. But, hey, Chris, give me your username and password. I got to travel to Geneva and I got to get this project done over the weekend. I'll delete everything when I'm done. Okay. Here's my buddy. Here, just make sure you delete it all, right? But this is where it becomes a problem because you go stand up, build your app, connect it to a database, but you forget to clean it up or to disconnect or to delete everything. It's a huge, huge problem. And almost every time we go out and do an install and do just a simple discovery of what assets you have, it's always the, hey, what's that? Because they see an asset or an account that they had no idea about. So this is really, really, again, it's visibility. And I kind of inferred this earlier, but, you know, so hyper connected, man. You know, I'm federating my authentication. I'm using another cloud provider for my DR services. I'm got a HA set up between 2 different cloud providers. All this stuff is going on. Using GitHub, using more repositories. These things are just spreading our surface area farther and farther and farther, thinning us out and making it more and more challenging for us to keep our arms around all of this that we're responsible for securing. And then finally, they're immature. They're young because the space is young. I mean, containers, look at how containers have taken off, you know, and they haven't really been around that long. It's just really remarkable. And it is that pace why Neil from Gartner says it is going to be your fault. And I have to point out, you'll see this says through 2023, at least 99%. Well, where I grew up, ladies and gentlemen, at least means it's going to likely be more. Well, there's not a whole lot of more to be, but it also can't be less. I mean, it is everyone. And so that's really the message. So if I get a chance, I'm going to show you how to never have to worry about this one. But this is probably one of the most commonly mentioned failures. Storage left unencrypted, right? And so I'm going to just run through a few examples of the various types of compromises that have occurred in the cloud. I suspect most of you have heard about these or similar, but there's very simple tools to make sure this never happens. But you have to have the tools that can provide that continuous enforcement and constantly be combing and looking at the environment for anything new that's out of compliance with the rules that you've set. In and of, okay? That's the bifurcation. That's the simple man's way of dividing what you're responsible for and what the cloud providers are responsible for. You, anything that's in. So if there's a CVE for something you have put in, you got to take care of it. And this is something people don't understand. I'll guarantee you this. The odds are very, very good that Microsoft and Google and Amazon can build a better data center than you and Larry or you and your network team. I'm just saying, that's a fact. And they're keeping all that stuff nip and tuck, tight, updated. But it's you that has to worry about the stuff you're putting into the environment. And this is the oversimplified but really key understanding that you have all of the same responsibilities for everything that you're utilizing in that cloud environment. And then lastly, we are in for some crazy times, I believe, in the ensuing years as we get, look at, on-prem, there's clearly defined borders and perimeters. In the cloud, PaaS, IaaS, SaaS, it's all just the cloud. And the definition of where one stops and where begins is yours, software defined. So as we move and shift into this world where we're not having multiple places to authenticate, but we're federating it out and we're having this hyper-connected world, the likelihood of an exploit somewhere in that chain being taken advantage of by a bad guy, we're going to see that increase more and more and more, those compound attacks. And it just is an example of why we all need to make sure we have the right tools with the right expertise. And I always like to take this time to mention, there's an abundant amount of free or near free training. It's called CBT. And, there's an acronym. I'm not sure if many remember it. I'm an old guy. It's RTFM. Remember that? F stands for fine, unless you're alone, and it changes to another F word after the 7th time they said, "Hey, now how do you do that?" It's like, "Hey, would you read the manual?" Right? But we don't have manuals anymore. We're now in a world of, let's just point and click. Oh, undo. Oh, undo. We do that, right? We do something, oh, that's not what I wanted, undo. Well, did you know that in AWS, there's over 200 controls that have no undo? We need to get informed, really understand this environment, because now with, east-west traffic, the potential consequence if somebody does hijack my account, and the fact that we're still immature on the tools, we're still in the early days, and you can keep yourself out of that 1% by just spending a little bit of time getting training, getting the right tools. Now, I'm excited to tell you, and if this has not come out, I want to make sure I'm very clear on this. The cloud providers provide terrific security. They're very, very secure. and they understand that your adoption rate is slowed by your concerns about security. So they're doing all they can. And in fact, I'm going to reach over here and I'll just pull. This is we pay the Gartner tax. So this is a report from Gartner from last October, excuse me, how to make cloud more secure than your own data center. And it goes on to say, properly managed security and risk management leaders can secure cloud better than their data centers. So, you know, you've got one of the largest analyst firms in the world saying you can actually make it more secure, but you're not going to do it alone. And you're not going to do it without additional tools, because also in this report, one of the first things it suggests, even if you're in a single cloud environment, is a posture management solution, because we're back talking about that, protecting you from you in this world of software-defined everything. We're seeing more and more services getting offered by the cloud providers, and they're continuing to offer more security. And actually, we work very, very closely with all of the cloud providers because their game is not providing protection and security and posture management. They're all about building out their capabilities. While they certainly offer great security tools, it's not for the other guy. And this is where posture management really becomes especially critical. Exciting stuff happening in the world of security, exciting stuff happening in the world of cloud security. And it's driven because of the constantly changing, evolving cloud environment with functions as a service, you know, containers, Kubernetes. I mean, I can go on and on. It's very, very dynamic. And the bad guys are also using all of the technology. So the threats are evolving as well. What you're going to find is so challenging is imposing and implementing uniformity and consistency, whether it's blob or S3, right? Because it's storage, right? It's the fact that they're all trying to summit the same mountain, but they're taking different paths, and I'm meaning the cloud providers. And I just want to explain what I mean. One cloud provider that's very well known has a very, very popular product called Active Directory. There's another cloud provider that doesn't have anything called Active Directory, and they're both behemoths. But they both have to provide identity and access management and authentication, right? So both are doing it, but they're doing it differently. But they're trying to get into the same, they're trying to get to the same summit. So the sacred cows, if you will, result in different offerings that evolve. When others don't have sacred cows, they do it differently. I'm not saying one's right or wrong, one's better than the other. If you're an Active Directory shop, that may work better for you in some instances, but not always. My suggestion is merely they're all doing it the same, but slightly different, very much like you and how you do things like compliance. Lots of APIs, but also this is a key understanding that it's different, right? Microsoft's not releasing APIs on a schedule with Amazon and Google, so they're all coming out with the exact same APIs with the exact same functionality for you for convenience. It's quite the contrary. This is what creates the challenge. How, if it's available here but not over here, how do you create uniformity? So it's why tools like CloudGuard can really help homogenize, harmonize those environments. And, you know, Chris and his firm, you know, these are the types of organizations I really always encourage my customers to partner and align with. You want vendors and partners that really, truly understand cloud first, have put cloud first in their business model, and are committed to it. So Let's shift and kind of get into and just talk about some of the trends hopefully you're well aware of and you too are taking advantage of. One of the most talked about is shift left, right? This notion that we need to get out of this traditional waterfall development model and move into this new CI/CD pipeline where we're constantly interrogating, constantly modifying, constantly improving our security controls through this process, not waiting until the end. This is again, Persalvo is Shira's company. This is the space she's in. We've also made some really exciting advancements in the arena of shift left and DevOps, DevSecOps, and securing the CI/CD pipeline. You'll see some new offerings that'll be added to the CloudGuard family in addition to the workload protection and the other things that we have today. Automation is absolutely essential to take advantage of the cloud like it really can be taken advantage of. To do, as Gartner says, make it more secure than your own data center. You have to automate or you won't be able to move at the speed of cloud. It won't be possible. If you're expecting to put your hands on the keyboards every time there's some alert or every time you need to respond to some misconfiguration, I should say, you're in big trouble. Now, the great news is there's terrific tools to do it. But again, we need to understand how it's different than it used to be, and that the consequences can be significant in just one simple set versus get by a developer, okay? So you have to understand what the consequences are when you turn on automation, because it'll have different impacts if something goes wrong that could have some significant operational impact. And this whole world of orchestration, it's new because we've moved out of the world of having my hands on the keyboards and the consoles and the devices in my data center. And now we've kind of moved into that abstracted world of I'm the conductor orchestrating all of this software defined stuff. All the while, all the stuff's constantly changing. So it's a pretty fast, crazy space. And again, why I really think partners are the smartest way to go. This, containers just make so much sense because they're so simple. They remove so much of the complexity and make it just easier. I oversimplify and kind of look at it like a box of every colored shape of Legos that you'd ever want, ready-made and all plug in together. It's really taking off. And the expectation is that it's just going to really dominate cloud in the next few years. So what's going to help you adopt the cloud more? This we've already started to see, shifting away from default in not encrypted to defaulting to encrypted. But customers want encrypted data. They want to be able to automate their compliance, and they need to make sure, and this is happening. I can assure you this is happening. The APIs are rich and continuing to come both from the cloud providers and from vendors like us. What do you consider to be really the most important? And I wanted to include this because I want to get a chance, hopefully, to show you this if I can. Having the ability to write custom rules for compliance is really a big deal. And it's because what you don't want is you don't want to invest in a tool that has really great compliance controls, but I have to call Chris, the developer, every time I want to modify my compliance rule. You need a tool that makes it really simple and accessible to modify. And again, I'm going to hopefully show that to you in a second. You need to be able to integrate it in with your ticketing systems. It has to work with your workflow. It can't be an island, and then also integrate with other security and scanning tools that you have. Look, all the things you've been doing, you have to continue to do. The new tools we need have to protect everything, and everything is constantly changing. And so that's why you need to make a commitment and partner with a vendor that's also made a commitment to getting ahead of and staying ahead of the changing world that's needing to be secured. Everything you've been doing, you got to keep doing. I'm telling you, if you've not done it, get one of your sharp folks to get into and start really looking into DevOps, DevSecOps, CI/CD pipeline, and the tools that are available. Uniformity, homogenize, pulling all of these different cloud environments together from a UI perspective, that's where it really becomes challenging, and one of the things I think that we really do well. And then lastly, native controls and the ability to enrich and provide context to the data is absolutely essential if you want to make any sense out of that stuff that's going on up in the cloud. So we've got some great resources. I'll make sure that Chris has all of these and you can get them. A great ebook that talks about compliance. Oversimplified, compliance in the cloud is like being in a one-man sailboat in a hurricane. You need to constantly be adjusting, constantly be moving. Because of that ephemeral nature, you just can't let go of the rudder because you're going to get blown all over everywhere. Great tool that will help you put in an automated compliance solution. Go get started with containers. You know, this author says, just go pick a standalone app that doesn't require anything else and put it into a container. You'll find this is a super exciting environment, very fast moving, and one you're going to want to take advantage of. I've got this great Cloud Security Blueprint 2.0. It's the second one we've written. It's a very comprehensive document that really goes through and explains why segmentation is so critical and some of the other very important considerations when moving to the cloud. I'm happy to provide that for you. And then really to kind of summarize, ladies and gentlemen, you need to own it. It is totally up to you. That surface area is going to continue to just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you need to get ahead of it with the right tools. As often as possible, be cloud native and look to the right partners, experts, so you can keep a handle on your own business, but also really take advantage of the cloud, because you know the bad guys are not going to let their hair down. You can't either. So hey, I have a podcast. It's called Talking Cloud, little selfless plug. I hope that you'll check it out. I've got 14 episodes up there. People like the past Chief Information Security Officer and Senior Vice President for AT&T and Chief Compliance Officer for big multi-billion-dollar company Calpine, and a whole bunch of others, and some really smart folks. I hope you'll listen to it. But hey, Chris, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but if you don't mind, can I go ahead and just do a quick demonstration of how to modify compliance rules in Dome 9?
Of course, yes. It's very fast forward, I think. So please go ahead.
Let me get here and tell me if you're seeing my screen. Can you see it?
We can see the thank you slide.
Okay, then I need to go and I'm going to stop share, and then I'm going to share something different. So then I'm going to go here. So what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm logging into the CloudGuard Dome 9 posture management solution. I'm not going to be able to go through all of this. It's an incredibly comprehensive product. You can see this is actually a preview of our new dashboard, these cool little widgets that I can actually move around and It's actually pretty cool. But what I wanted to go to is I want to go to the posture management solution. This is for those of you that have seen Dome 9, this is the original or the old dashboard that we use. All along here, you can see there's a variety of capabilities. I want to show you posture management. That's where the GSL rule builder is located. Now, we have, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of bundles from NIST and HIPAA and PCI and GDPR and best practices. And I mean, there's tons of compliance bundles pre-built. But my experience, what I found is everybody does compliance, but they all do it a little differently, right? It's like accounting. So I want to show you how powerful it is and how easy it is for you to customize your compliance rules. So I can use my editor. So if I'm a real techie guy, I can actually just bang out the code myself, but I'm not. I'm a simple man. I need point and click. So here you can see all of the different assets that we have. I want to just show you, for example, we all have heard about storage being unencrypted. So I want to check my AWS production environment, and I want to make sure all of my S3 buckets are encrypted. Here's how easy it is to write a compliance rule. I find the asset, S3 bucket. I click. Should have encryption. That's 3 clicks. Close the scope. S3 buckets should have encryption. Now I can go and I can select what I want to run it against. And I'm going to go to my AWS production and test. Now it's going out and it's checking all 76 of my S3 buckets. And you see, they're all encrypted. Okay. But this is the power. This is the power, because I just got an email from my CIO and he wants all storage to have a ID associated with it. So now my S3 bucket should have encryption and an ID that's equal to AWS. And I add. Now, when I go test, surely I'm going to fail, but this is the power. It's so accessible. And oh, by the way, here's the context preview of what I'm writing as I point and click in my UI. Unbelievably powerful, really simple, and it's that easy to create and interrogate your environment. The other thing, and I'll leave you with this, that I encourage you all to take a look at is CloudBots. And I'll point to Chris to be able to set you up. But what CloudBots is an open source project that Dome 9 curates. It's been out for a number of years, and we've got bots for all 3 of the main public cloud environments. And there are just tons of them available from so here in this example, I just showed you how you can interrogate and find out what S3 buckets are not encrypted. With the CloudBot, it'll go in and actually change that configuration to encrypted, because you understand that in the world of APIs, I'm not touching your junk. I'm just getting notified about it. And then I say, hey, Chris, found this, and you need to go in and fix it. Right? You need to remediate. This is why it's so important to have tools that find it, but then give you the ability to auto remediate, so you don't have to respond to every single time it says, oh, this is wrong. Whoop, this is wrong. So anyway, thank you all very, very much. I hope that was good for you, Chris.